Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we're going to be discussing a topic that I've covered on the channel before, but it's such an important topic that I believe it's necessary to cover more than once and with a variety of incidents that kind of demonstrate my point. The topic for today's video, or the subject that I want to go over, is I want to urge officers, new and old, to stop attempting to use a taser on individuals who are within arm's reach of you. That's what we're going to be talking about today. The image that you're seeing off to the screen here is a screenshot from a video that you're going to see here in just a moment. And this was an incident that happened on November the 6th, 2022, down south in the state of Louisiana, where a police officer stopped a vehicle for a traffic infraction. The driver of the traffic infraction was not complying with the officer. It turned into a struggle. The officer pulled out his taser, loses his taser, and is actually forced to use deadly force against the driver that he had pulled over and killing him. This is a topic that I like to cover. Just, I don't know, this idea of pulling your taser when you're within arm's reach of somebody is a very dangerous idea, because it can lead to an officer involved shooting that might not have been necessary had you not drawn your taser. And we've seen some examples in recent years. I think I can pull one up over here. Yeah, this was, let me go right here. This is the guy from Grand Rapids, Michigan. This is officer, I believe his name is Shure. Yeah. He killed a guy named Patrick Loyola. I can't pronounce his name very well, but this was a traffic stop where the driver was refusing to cooperate with the officer. The officer went to detain him, had to use force, had to tackle him to the ground. They wrestled for quite some time. The officer drew his taser, attempted to tase the driver. The driver was able to get his taser away from him. The officer then fired one round into the back of the guy's head, killing him. That officer is now on trial for murder. This is a situation that we obviously don't want to see our police officers get into. You don't want to get into a controversial use of force. If you have to use force, you want those to be extremely clean and easy to articulate uses of force. It's easier for you. It's easier for the public to understand. It helps. It's a benefit to the public trust. There's a lot of things that go in that. And, I also don't want to discount the fact that if you have a lethal use of force, you would have just killed somebody that didn't need to be killed. And I think that we need to take a lot of responsibility for our actions when it comes to those kinds of situations. So before I get too deep into the incident, I want to go ahead and let you watch the video. After the video, we'll go ahead and discuss what we saw, and we're going to talk about exactly why it is that I want officers to kind of be cognizant of this. So without further ado, here's the video of the officer involved shooting that occurred in Louisiana on November the 6th, 2022.
Stay right there. Right here. To the truck. To the truck. Yeah, go to it. Walk over here. Walk over here. Walk to your truck. Stand by 8th and Broadway. To the back of your truck. Show me. Keep your hands out your pockets. Put them on the. Walk to the back of your truck. Walk to the back of your truck. Face the back of face your truck for me. Face the truck.
What's this?
Huh?
What's this?
Because you agitate, you turn around, you ain't following nothing.
I am following.
Look, turn.
I don't hear you. Can I get my phone, sir?
We'll get to that. Just turn and face the truck. Turn and face the truck.
What I did?
Face the truck.
What is wrong with you? Why is you grabbing on me, man?
Give me a unit.
Why you
Face
grabbing on me,
truck.
bro?
Turn around and put your hands behind your back.
What's wrong with you, bro?
Put your hands behind your back.
For what?
Put your hands behind your back.
For what, bro?
Put your hands.
For what?
Your back.
For what?
10-18! 10-18! Ow!
What you, bro?
Shots fired.
Alrighty, so the officer in this particular case was not indicted by the grand jury, but it's important to remember that some officers who have done this exact same thing have been charged with murder. So I think that when it comes to police and police training, it's important that we incorporate those kind of ideas into what's going on. So from this part on in the video, I want to I've got a bunch of still shots that I'm going to show you. We're going to kind of break down what happened in the video and kind of how things went wrong, because this deputy, if he lived in Franklin County, where I live, with a county prosecutor who is patently anti-police, that prosecutor would have found a grand jury that would have indicted this officer. So maybe down in Louisiana, this guy was safe, but I can tell you that in Columbus, Ohio, if an officer does this, he's going to have a much more difficult time getting through the grand jury process than he was. So we want to try to avoid getting ourselves into these kind of situations. So the beginning of the incident, what do we have? We have a traffic stop where we have the driver gets out of his vehicle, stand next to the vehicle, and he's clearly being defiant. He's not going to go with the program. He's standing here with his arms crossed. This is the universal sign of go fuck yourself. I'm not going to do what you tell me to do. What can a police officer do in this circumstance? First thing you should be doing is getting on your radio saying, hey, I need a couple more cars. This guy's not going with the program. He's kind of passively resisting at this point in time. He's not doing anything active. He's not trying to kill you. He's not trying to run. He's standing there. He kind of meanders around the vehicle a couple times. As long as he's doing those kind of things, you can stand back by your car and wait for your backup. You don't have to go hands-on with this subject. This is something that I think a lot of officers need to remember, and myself included. When you get into these situations, your blood pressure starts to go up. When your blood pressure starts to go up, you start to kind of rush things. We need to remember that in a situation like this, there is no rush. I can stand here all day long, let this guy stand there defiantly. Once I get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 15 buddies along with me, then we can go ahead and approach this guy. We can put him in, take him into custody, put him in cuffs, do whatever we need to do. Or if just another 1 or 2 officers show up, he might instantly become compliant. So that's the first thing that everybody needs to remember, and a good way to avoid unnecessary uses of force. Just stand around and wait for backup. I realize that everybody doesn't have that luxury, but if you do have the luxury of backup, wait for backup. What's the next part in the video here? Okay, so this is the part where he has engaged the suspect. They're up at the truck, and there's a struggle ensuing. You know what? I actually have I meant to show this picture first. So this is the part where he's up there. He's starting to gain control of the guy's hands. At one point in time, he had a hold of the guy's arm. He kept moving his hand around, letting the guy move around and fidget. I'm the type of person that if I close the distance on you and I get a hold of one of your arms, I'm not going to let go of that arm. The way we're taught is if someone's arm comes out in front of them, you're going to grab that arm right here. So in this motion, I've got the wrist, I've got my other hand here. I can put my other hand on their elbow, and I can really control that person. The stuff where you're kind of pussyfooting around, playing handsy with people, this is not subject control. Subject control is a very important thing, and people need to gain some confidence on how to use their hands. If you've got a hold of someone's arm, put both hands on their arm. Maintain control of that one person's arm. You can swing them around. You can do a lot of different things. You can also grab that arm and bring it into you. You can hold that arm up against your body, and then you can use your entire center of mass to turn that person, prevent them from being able to strike you. There's a lot of things that you can do just holding on to someone's arm if the subject is a lot larger than you, which in this particular example, I don't think the subject was significantly larger than the deputy, but I do believe he was probably larger, stronger, and more powerful than the deputy. So that's the first thing we have is, you're in here with the hands. Now, the next thing that the deputy does, this is actually what starts the cascade of fatal events. He's got his hands up there. We're up there playing handsy. He's got the suspect within arm's reach. And rather than controlling his hands, he lets go with his right hand. So instead of having positive control over the subject's arms, he lets go and he reaches down and grabs his taser. That's what we're seeing right here. He's grabbing his taser. The suspect, who has a hand free, is reaching out and grabbing that deputy's taser at the same time. So now you're in a situation where you're actually fighting over a holstered weapon. What are we trained to do when you're fighting over a holstered weapon? You want to leave that weapon in the holster. We teach weapon retention, holster fighting, all of that stuff. There's things that you can do. You can cap that hand, grab, twist, and turn. These are all very common training tactics that police officers are trained on. I was even trained this when I was at basic training to become an MP back in the Army back in 1998. This is very universal, very, very well-known training. When you're going for your weapon and the other person has their hand on your hand, you don't unholster that weapon. Unfortunately, in this case, the deputy does unholster that weapon. So the deputy is unholstering his taser while the suspect has his hand on the deputy. The other one of the flaws with this kind of technique is you're using a taser. The taser is most effective at a range of 10 to 15 feet. When you're up close quarters with that taser, the taser is largely ineffective. And I can show you that over here. Let me get my screens flipped around here. This is a demonstration of how the taser works. This is on Taser's actual webpage, and I don't know if you guys can see this well enough, but it's about as big as I can make it for you and be comfortable. But this is the same kind of taser I'm pretty sure that the deputy was using. This is an X26 taser. The cartridge, the way it fires, there's two probes that are fired out of the cartridge. The first probe is going to fire straight and level. The second probe is at an 8-degree downward angle. As those probes fly through the air, they're going to spread further apart. You want to have a 12-inch or a 1 foot, or I think even 18 inches of probe spread in order to get good lockup on the subject. What that means is that you've got electric current. It goes from point A to point B. If this is the person's body, you want that current to travel through as much of that person's body as possible. That way you can get full lockup and they'll drop to the ground. If you're firing at close range, those probes are only this far apart in that cartridge. If you're firing at point blank range, both of those probes are going to go into your skin right here. All you're going to get is potential for pain compliance in that circumstance. You're not going to get any kind of lockup whatsoever. Basically, you're just trying to hurt that person. We don't use tasers to try to hurt people. We use tasers to incapacitate people. And you're not going to get that incapacitation when you're at close range with that taser. Every officer knows that and should know that. And we're taught that, if you are going to do a close quarters deployment with a taser, typically that's done when you have multiple officers holding someone down. And let's say they've got their arms locked underneath their body. Officers are pulling on their arms. They can't get the arms out. You go over the top, hit both probes in the small of that subject's back, or shoot them in the shoulder area. You then bring the taser gun all the way down to their calf and you press it up against the calf. I don't have my taser down here with me, but the taser has a function where those probes come out, that shock that's actually zapping, it's actually live on the end of that. So you can use it as a pressure shock tool. But when you have those probes in the small of someone's back, and then you go down, you follow up with a close quarters probe deployment with a follow-up on a extremity, that's when you get that current going through their whole body. They lock up, you're able to get their arms out and go. Those are the appropriate times to use a close quarters taser deployment, not when you're by yourself and the subject has basically his hand on your taser. The next thing that happens, which is predictable, the taser was ineffective. The suspect was able to knock the taser out of the officer's hand. When the taser is out of the officer's hand on the ground, the suspect then grabs the taser. And now you have a suspect who was unarmed. He's now armed. A taser can incapacitate an officer, and an officer can be killed when he's incapacitated by a taser. That means that this is now a lethal force situation. The deputy in this case, which is the appropriate thing to do when you're forced with a lethal force threat, he pulls out his pistol, shoots and kills the suspect that was over top of him. Fortunately for him, in this case, the grand jury agreed with him, and I'm gonna get the gun off my screen here. The grand jury agreed that this was a a necessary use of force, and the officer did not face any charges because at the end of the day, it was the suspect's actions that caused the deputy to have that use of force. But at the end of the day, it's also a situation where the deputy did make a series of mistakes that led to a lethal force encounter with a suspect that maybe it was going to turn into a lethal force encounter no matter what the deputy did. But there's also a chance that had the officer or the deputy taken slightly different tactics, it would not have become a lethal force encounter. We do not want to go back to this one. We don't want to get in a situation where we get a Brad grand jury and we're in a situation like Officer Shure is here, where it was the suspect's actions that led to the lethal force encounter. But unfortunately, in the state of Michigan, and in particular in Grand Rapids, the grand jury did not agree that it was a necessary lethal use of force. I think I don't really think there's much else to say about this. I just want officers to be aware that when you're within arm's reach of somebody, it's not the appropriate time to be drawing out your secondary weapons. When you are in a situation like this, you need to be worried. You need to be focused on using your hands to defend yourself. And if you have to let go of that suspect, the only thing you should be doing is getting to your radio and screaming for more help and letting people know as best you can what's going on. There's a lot you can do with your hands, even against a person that's much bigger and stronger than you. I haven't necessarily had to fight anybody that was bigger and stronger than me, but I have had to fight people who were, I was in a muddy fight in the back of an alley one time with a guy who was smaller than me, but he was very strong and he kept twisting his arms and getting free of my grip. I ended up having to bear hug him and basically lay on top of him on the ground in order to subdue him. And all I did was hold him down until backup arrived. I wasn't trying to go to my intermediate weapons. I wasn't trying to get my cuffs out. All I was focused on was controlling the suspect so that he can't hurt me and he can't run. I think that is, if you're not a jiu-jitsu black belt or someone that is incredibly skilled at this close quarters hand-to-hand type stuff, I think that's where your focus should be the majority of the time, rather than going to your secondary weapons until you get maybe to the point of exhaustion or something like that. That's kind of a different story. I believe that I'll go back here. I believe that Officer Shure, in his case, he was in a very long, prolonged, extended fight with a subject that was considerably larger than him. I think that he was at the point of exhaustion, and his uses of force were appropriate. Using the taser in the instance that he used the taser, he had no other option. He was at close range, but the suspect was in danger of overpowering him. So as a last-ditch effort, he tried to use his taser. The taser was ineffective. He lost it, then had to use lethal force against the guy. This particular case, I don't think that was it. I think that the appropriate thing for the grand jury to do was issue no bill. I'm not saying this guy needs to be charged. I'm just saying don't put yourself in that situation. So that's going to be it for me today. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you later.